Most people walk past powerful medicinal plants every single day without realizing it. They grow through sidewalks, along fences, beside trails, and in empty fields, plants that humans relied on for centuries before modern medicine ever existed. Some were used to stop bleeding, some were carried for lung problems and infections. One on this list is so effective for skin repair that compounds from it are still used in modern wound creams today. And another was studied so heavily for mood support that doctors in parts of Europe still prescribe it as medicine. The strange part is that many of these plants are now treated like weeds. In this video, we're going through 10 healing plants growing wild around you right now, how they were traditionally used, what modern research says about them, and how to actually recognize them in the wild. And trust me, by the end of this video, you're never going to look at an ordinary patch of grass the same way again. Let's get into it. Number one, dandelion. Let's start with the plant. Almost everyone has spent years trying to destroy from their lawn. This is dandelion. Most people see it as a weed, but dandelion is actually one of the most nutritious and medicinally useful wild plants on Earth, and there's a good chance it's growing right outside your door. And the incredible part is that nearly every piece of this plant has value. The leaves are packed with vitamins A, C, and K, along with minerals like iron and potassium. In fact, gram for gram, dandelion leaves contain more iron than spinach. But what made these leaves especially important in traditional diets is their bitterness. Bitter plants naturally stimulate digestion. The moment you taste that bitterness, your body increases digestive enzymes and bile production, helping your digestive system process food more efficiently. The leaves were also traditionally used as a natural diuretic, helping the body release excess water while still supplying potassium. Then there's the root. For centuries, dandelion root was used in traditional medicine to support liver function and digestion. When roasted, the root produces a dark, earthy drink people have used as a coffee substitute for generations. Even the flower is useful. Dandelion flowers are edible, rich in antioxidants, and have been infused into teas, wines, and herbal preparations for hundreds of years. What makes dandelion so fascinating is that cultures across Europe, China, and the Middle East all ended up valuing the same plant independently. That usually only happens when something genuinely works. The next time you see someone ripping dandelions out of their yard, you'll realize they may be pulling out one of the most useful plants in the neighborhood. But as useful as dandelion is, the next plant might be even more surprising because most people walk on it every single day without realizing it has been used as a natural first aid plant for centuries. Number two, plantain. Before modern first aid kits existed, people often relied on a simple plant growing right beneath their feet. And chances are you've walked past this one hundreds of times without noticing it. It grows low to the ground with broad leaves and strong parallel veins, showing up in lawns, parks, sidewalks, gravel, and disturbed soil almost everywhere in the world. For thousands of years, it's been used as a natural remedy for cuts, bites, stings, and irritated skin. What makes it so effective is that the leaves contain compounds linked to skin repair and inflammation support. One of those compounds is allantoin, which helps encourage skin cell recovery. In fact, allantoin is still used today in commercial wound creams and skincare products. The plant also contains aucubin, a natural compound studied for its antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties. That's why people traditionally crush the fresh leaves and press them directly onto wounds, insect bites, or bee stings. It was basically nature's first aid kit. Plantain became so connected to human activity that some indigenous groups in North America reportedly called it white man's footprint because it seemed to appear wherever settlers traveled. But its uses didn't stop at the skin. The leaves were also brewed into teas, traditionally used for sore throats, coughs, and digestive irritation because of their soothing, coating properties. And here's one of the easiest ways to identify it. If you gently tear one of the leaves in half, you'll usually see thin, string-like fibers stretching between the pieces like tiny threads. Once you notice that feature, you start seeing this plant everywhere. But the next plant on this list is even stranger, because instead of standing out with bright flowers or strong smells, it survives by quietly clinging to everything it touches. Number 3, cleavers. Have you ever walked through tall grass and come out covered in little sticky plant pieces? That's cleavers. And those tiny hooks aren't just annoying. They're one of the easiest ways to identify a plant that's been used for centuries to support the body's lymphatic system. Most people never think about their lymphatic system, but it plays a major role in clearing waste, excess fluid, and unwanted material from the body. You can think of it like a drainage network running alongside your circulation. Traditionally, cleavers was used as a gentle lymphatic herb, especially during spring when people often felt sluggish after long winters indoors. Herbalists commonly used it for swollen glands, congested skin, and that heavy, run-down feeling that sometimes comes with inactivity and seasonal transitions. What makes cleavers especially interesting is that it's usually used fresh. A traditional preparation is a cold infusion, where the fresh plant is soaked overnight in cold water instead of brewed hot like a tea. That's because some of the plant's delicate compounds are believed to break down with heat. The taste is mild, fresh, and slightly green. And once you learn to recognize cleavers, you start seeing it everywhere. It sprawls through hedges, climbs over nearby plants, and sticks to clothing using tiny hooked hairs along the stems and leaves. It's one of those plants most people spend their lives brushing off their pants. Without realizing, it may have been one of the most useful spring herbs growing around them the entire time. But while cleavers was valued for gentle internal support, the next plant earned its reputation in a much more dramatic way. Number 4, yarrow. The scientific name of yarrow reveals just how legendary this plant really is. Achillea millefolium. The name comes from Achilles, the Greek warrior who, according to legend, used yarrow to treat wounded soldiers during the Trojan War. And the reason that story survived for so long is because yarrow actually does contain compounds associated with wound care. Traditionally, the plant was used to help slow bleeding and protect cuts from infection, which is why people often press the fresh leaves directly onto wounds. But yarrow became famous for much more than that. For centuries, herbalists also used it during fevers because yarrow tea promotes sweating, helping the body regulate temperature naturally. Like several plants on this list, yarrow is also bitter, meaning it stimulates digestion and was traditionally used for bloating, cramps, and sluggish stomachs after heavy meals. The plant also contains anti-inflammatory compounds, which helped make it one of the most versatile herbs in traditional medicine. And humans may have been connected to yarrow for an incredibly long time. Archaeologists have even found yarrow pollen at burial sites dating back tens of thousands of years. You'll usually find it growing in meadows, roadsides, and open fields. The leaves are soft and feathery, almost fern-like, while the flowers grow in flat clusters of tiny white blooms. For a plant growing quietly along roadsides and empty fields, yarrow has one of the oldest and most respected medicinal histories in the world. But the next plant on this list was considered so valuable in some traditions that people believed it deserved respect before it was even harvested. Number 5, elder. Elder is one of the most respected medicinal plants in traditional herbal history. And what makes it unique is that it provides 2 different remedies at 2 different times of year. In spring and early summer, the tree produces large clusters of tiny cream-colored elder flowers with a sweet, distinctive scent. Traditionally, elderflower was used for congestion, fevers, and seasonal allergies because it promotes gentle sweating and helps reduce excess mucus in the nose and throat. For centuries, people brewed it into teas, tinctures, and syrups, especially during cold and allergy season. Then, later in the year, come the elderberries. The dark purple berries have been used for generations to support the immune system during colds and flu, and modern research has actually studied elderberry for its antiviral and antioxidant properties. Some studies suggest elderberry extract may help reduce the severity and duration of certain viral illnesses. But there's one important thing to know. Raw elderberries should not be eaten in large amounts because they contain compounds that can cause nausea. Traditionally, the berries are cooked into syrups, teas, jams, and tinctures, which neutralizes those compounds. You'll often find elder growing along woodland edges, hedgerows, parks, and open, disturbed areas. It's recognizable by its clusters of flowers and berries, along with its compound leaves made up of multiple leaflets on a single stem. And once you learn to identify it, you realize this one plant provides two powerful seasonal remedies year after year. But the next plant on this list became so closely associated with healing that for centuries, people believed it could protect both the body and the mind. Number 6, St. John's wort. St. John's wort is one of the most researched medicinal plants in the world. In fact, in countries like Germany, it has been prescribed by doctors for mild to moderate depression and low mood for decades. Modern studies have examined compounds in the plant that appear to influence neurotransmitters linked to mood, which is why St. John's wort became so widely respected in herbal medicine. But emotional wellness is only part of its history. Traditionally, St. John's wort was also used for nerve-related discomfort, bruises, burns, and muscle pain. Herbal oils made from the flowers were often applied to areas of tingling, shooting, or irritated pain because the plant was believed to have a strong connection to the nervous system. And one of the most fascinating parts of this plant is how easy it is to identify once you know what to look for. The flowers are bright yellow with 5 petals, usually blooming during summer. If you hold one of the leaves up to sunlight, you'll notice tiny translucent dots scattered across it, almost like pinholes. That feature is actually where the plant gets part of its scientific name, perforatum. And if you crush a flower bud between your fingers, it releases a deep reddish purple stain, a sign of the plant's active pigments. Traditionally, people infuse the flowers into oil, creating a deep red herbal oil that's still widely used today. But there's one important warning. St. John's wort can interact with certain medications, including antidepressants and birth control, so anyone considering it internally should research those interactions carefully. For a wild plant growing quietly in fields and roadsides, St. John's wort has one of the strongest scientific reputations on this entire list. But while St. John's wort became known for supporting the nervous system, the next plant earned its reputation by helping people breathe easier. And once you see it, you'll understand why it's so hard to forget. Number 7, mullein. Once you learn to recognize mullein, you start seeing it everywhere. In its first year, it grows as a cluster of large, soft, velvety leaves close to the ground. In its second year, it sends up a tall flower spike covered in small yellow blooms that can tower over nearby plants. And for centuries, mullein has been associated with one part of the body more than anything else, the lungs. Traditionally, mullein leaf tea was used for coughs, congestion, bronchitis, and irritated airways. What made the plant so valued is that it was believed to do 2 things at once. First, it has soothing, mucilage-like properties that help coat and calm irritated throat and lung tissue. Second, it was traditionally used as an expectorant, meaning it helps loosen and move mucus out of the lungs instead of simply suppressing a cough. That made mullein especially useful for dry, stubborn coughs and heavy chest congestion. People living in smoky homes, dusty conditions, or harsh environments often relied on it to support respiratory health. The flowers were also traditionally infused into oils used for ear discomfort, a remedy that has existed in folk medicine for generations. You'll usually find mullein growing in dry, open areas like roadsides, gravel paths, vacant lots, and disturbed soil. And once that tall yellow flower stalk appears, it's almost impossible to mistake for anything else. But the next plant on this list is so small and ordinary looking that most people never notice it at all. Which is surprising because for centuries, it was literally called heal-all. Number 8, Prunella vulgaris. For centuries, this plant earned names like heal-all and all-heal because people used it for such a wide range of problems. And what's fascinating is that cultures across Europe, China, and North America all developed medicinal uses for it independently. Traditionally, self-heal was used for wounds, sore throats, skin irritation, fevers, and inflammation. Modern research has started to explain why. The plant contains rosmarinic acid, a well-studied antioxidant and anti-inflammatory compound also found in herbs like rosemary and lemon balm. Researchers have also studied compounds in self-heal for their potential antiviral activity, especially in relation to cold sores and certain viral skin conditions. In traditional herbal practices, strong teas made from the plant were sometimes used as washes or gargles for irritated skin, sore throats, and mouth ulcers. In Chinese medicine, Prunella vulgaris has been used for centuries as a cooling herb associated with excess heat and inflammation in the body. And despite its long medicinal history, most people barely notice it. Self-heal grows low, to the ground, in lawns, roadsides, forest edges, and gardens. It has small purple flower spikes with tiny clustered blooms and oval leaves growing in opposite pairs along the stem. Once you learn to identify it, you realize this little plant has probably been growing around you your entire life without you ever knowing its name. But the next plant on this list is one most people completely overlook because it appears so delicate and harmless. Yet for generations, these tiny purple flowers were used as both food and medicine. Number 9, wild violet. Wild violet is one of those plants people underestimate immediately. The flowers look delicate and ornamental, but this little plant has a long history as both food and medicine. And nutritionally, it's far more impressive than most people realize. The leaves are rich in vitamins A and C, along with compounds like rutin, which has been studied for supporting healthy circulation and blood vessels. Both the leaves and flowers are edible and have traditionally been used in teas, salads, syrups, and herbal remedies. But what made wild violet especially valued was its soothing nature. Traditionally, it was used for sore throats, dry coughs, irritated skin, and inflamed tissue because of its gentle cooling and moistening properties. Like cleavers, wild violet was also associated with lymphatic support, especially around the chest and neck. And the flowers themselves are remarkable. The purple blooms are rich in antioxidant pigments and can be made into vibrant syrups and teas that even change color when mixed with lemon juice. You'll usually find wild violets growing in shaded lawns, woodland edges, gardens, and moist areas during spring. Once you learn to recognize those heart-shaped leaves and tiny purple flowers, you realize this healing plant has probably been growing around you for years unnoticed. But the final plant on this list might be one of the most familiar of all, because millions of people have seen it growing in fields and lawns their entire lives without realizing it was traditionally used as a powerful cleansing and restorative herb. Number 10, red clover. You've probably seen red clover your entire life without ever realizing it was considered a healing plant. Those round pinkish purple flowers growing in fields, roadsides, and lawns have been used in herbal medicine for centuries. One reason red clover became so respected is because it contains compounds called isoflavones, plant chemicals studied for their gentle interaction with hormone receptors in the body. That's why it has traditionally been used to support menopause symptoms like hot flashes, something modern research has also explored. But red clover was valued for more than hormonal support. The flowers were commonly brewed into teas for coughs, chest irritation, and respiratory discomfort because of their soothing properties. Like violet and cleavers, red clover was also associated with lymphatic and skin support in traditional herbal medicine. And interestingly, the plant helps the environment too. Red clover naturally adds nitrogen back into the soil, improving the land around it as it grows. You'll usually find it in sunny fields, meadows, and grassy open areas, with its familiar 3-part leaves and rounded pink-purple flower heads covered in bees. For such a common plant, red clover has an incredibly long history of healing and nourishment. 10 plants, all growing wild, all offering something different: dandelion for digestion and liver support, plantain for wounds and irritated skin, cleavers for the lymphatic system, yarrow for bleeding and fevers, elder for seasonal illness, St. John's wort for the nervous system, mullein for the lungs, self-heal for inflammation, wild violet for soothing support, and red clover for nourishment and balance. What's most fascinating about these plants is that humans have relied on them for centuries, and in some cases, possibly much longer. These aren't rare discoveries hidden deep in forests. They're growing beside sidewalks, trails, fences, and backyards almost everywhere around us. Most people just stop noticing them. So the next time you go outside, take a closer look at what's growing nearby. You might be standing next to a plant people once depended on every single year. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more videos on wild medicinal plants, traditional remedies, and forgotten natural knowledge. And let me know in the comments which plant surprised you the most. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.